What's going on, y'all? This is Coach Mike D with another episode of Impact and Fulfillment. Yo, dig this. I'm going to take y'all back to a conversation I had a few years ago with a really good and wisdom-filled individual by the name of Jenesa Oden. Good friend of mine. She just drops gem after gem, and it really inspired my mother to take various actions in her life, which is really cool. But you all listen to this conversation and let me know what you think. But it's really loaded with wisdom, and we can always learn from our elders. So tune in to my conversations with Jenesa Oden from a few years ago. Welcome to Impact and Fulfillment with Coach Mike D, where you'll gain practical wisdom and dynamic insight from amazing conversations to live your best life. And I'm going to tell you, this episode is really going to be unique because it kind of came out of the blue after a random or not so random conversation with a really good friend of mine that I call Sister G. But her real name is Jenesa Oden. And she's a mom, she's a grandma, she's a great grandma. And as you'll hear in our conversation, she's loaded with wisdom. And one of the things that we were discussing, we were talking about, some kind of financial things one day. And she brought up this conversation or this memory that she has about something that happened with her grandmother from years past. And it still reigns vivid in her mind. But that story led to a whole other conversation that I think would be extremely important for us brothers and ladies listening to really be mindful of. And that's having tough conversations, but beneficial, tough, but beneficial and necessary conversations about directives, end of life, preparing for, transition and all of that. I mean, again, these are conversations we don't like to have. But we ended up talking about it, and I was just like, you know what? I wish the brothers were flies on the wall to hear the wisdom that you were dropping to me. And instead of doing that, I'm like, you know what? Brothers Learning from Sisters, episode 4 is going to be my conversation with my friend, Jenesa Oden. How you doing, Sister G?
I am doing fine, Mike. Glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. And so with Brothers Learning from Sisters, we start off initially with shout outs. So who are we without our support system, without our team, without our family, without those people who help us to be all that we can be? So take a few minutes or however much time you need to give your shout outs before we jump into your story.
Well, I want to first shout out to my church family, of course, my dynamic pastor, Derek Wakefield, and the Freedom Fellowship Church family, of course, which you are a member and part of.
Absolutely.
Also to my biological family. I am blessed to have 3 children. I'm blessed to have 5 granddaughters and 1 grandson and 2 great-grandchildren. I have 9 first cousins and all of their children. And we do a lot of praying. We do a lot of talking together. And so that's my shout out right there, my family.
That is so awesome. And it's good that, who are we without the people around us? The African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. But as we become adults, we need villages too.
Amen. I agree. Amen.
And so, jumping into our conversation, when you and I spoke, we were talking about, finance and money and this and that, just having some, back and forth conversation. And in the midst of our conversation, you brought up a story that still reigns vivid in your mind, some 45, 50 years later, of an interaction or something that happened with your grandmother. Can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Well, my grandmother was a very important person in my life. And I remember we were talking about life insurance, and she was telling me the importance of having life insurance. And I remember as a teenager, my grandmother paying a gentleman that came by the house every week, and my grandmother giving him what money she had. Sometime it was a dime, a quarter, a dollar, whatever she could put together. And when my grandmother died in 1972, I just assumed that she was going to be getting a lot of money to help with her burial insurance. Well, surprising to me, when the gentleman came with the check to give to my grandfather, it was only for $250. And my grandmother had been paying this insurance, to my recollection, from 5 to 7 years. And I know that it wasn't a lot of money, but I just assumed that it would be a whole lot more than just $250. I was so disappointed in what he gave her. And I mean, he was proud to give her that check. And my grandfather accepted it, of course, but it wasn't nearly enough to pay for her funeral. But he worked for a funeral home, thank God, which helped a lot. Mm-hmm. And the gentleman that he worked for helped us with picking out a casket, knowing what we could afford. So he did that. Of course, he helped with the burial fees and everything. But the importance of having good coverage is what we were talking about. So that's the conversation we got started with.
And, you know, and the concept of good coverage and life insurance and things of that sort, it's like those are situations, or those are conversations that are touchy, right? Because we don't like to think about the end, but the reality is all of us are going to have an end at some point. There's going to be an expiration date on this gallon of milk. You know what I'm saying? Right.
Yes, I do. Yes,
at some point. And so when you were sharing that story, you also dropped something on me, and you said, you know, one of the things that I'm very mindful of is I don't want to make my kids pay to bury me. And you said that, and it made me really just think about the whole concept of planning, of preparation, of, you know, but then also having those conversations. But it also makes you think about really taking an inventory of where you are.
Yes, you need to do that. And what I did was I usually go home every July to visit my children. I'm from Rockford, Illinois, so I go home and visit them. So this year when I went, I decided to do some things for my own preparation for my children. My mother did it for me. And I basically had to pay to bury my mother because she didn't have life insurance. Mm-hmm. So without my church family helping, without friends and family helping, I would not have been able to do that. Mm-hmm. And I don't want my children to have to go through that. It did not take me very long. Thank God the funeral director, Mr. Bill, was very patient with me, and I was able to get that done in about 8 months. But I didn't want my children to have to do that. So in July, when I went home, I took a copy of my obituary. I wrote my own obituary. I took a copy of my living will. I took a copy of my regular will. I took a copy of my driver's license, my social security card. I took a copy of my birth certificate. And then I took a copy of some other important papers, my banking information, because otherwise they would have no way of knowing. With me, Tennessee, them, Illinois, they wouldn't know who I bank with or how to get my money out or my insurance policies and things like that. And I wanted them to be able to have that information, to be able to put me away in a very respectful way. Mm. My mother did it for me. And I tell you what, when that mother closes those eyes, it's like everything in your head just leaves. I couldn't think of my own name. I couldn't think of my mother's birthday, but I was able to go to the little silver box that my mother gave me and pull out everything. And I was able to give that to the necessary people to be able to write up that information. And so that's what I thought I would do for my children, so that they wouldn't have to go through what I went through. It's very disturbing when your mother passes away, or when any relative passes away. But it's something about that mother when she goes. It's everything. You just lose everything. And I wanted them to be able to write everything up for me as well.
You know, you said something there. And again, this is this is a touchy conversation, but the whole concept of brothers learning from sisters is to learn from different vantage points and take sisters who have dynamic wisdom and experiences for us to learn from different angles so that we can become the best versions of ourselves. You know what I'm saying? That's what this thing is all about. It's about personal development. And this is something, again, even for me, it's touchy. Like, I don't like talking about it. I don't like hearing about it. But you also are coming from a place of wisdom in a sense that you realized that how tough it was to go through something and to not have things in place, how much more tough it would have been if you didn't have a playbook, so to speak. And so for you, it's like, I know what happens, but I also am very real about life and the cycle of life and how things happen. I want to prepare you for that so that you don't necessarily fall victim to some of the issues that other people are falling victim to, just having to figure it out. So you were being very intentional about that. But what I wanted to kind of ask you about, because, you and I also spoke about how, because your children, you had to position this conversation in a way that is basically, you had to give them a little bit of sugar with the medicine. You know what I'm saying? Talk to us a little bit about how you positioned that conversation to happen.
Well, we went over to my youngest son's house, me and my daughter. My oldest son didn't want to have anything to do with that, and I understand that. Some children just can't, and I understood that. So we went over to my youngest son's house. We had a cookout, because I know how sensitive he is. My daughter is the oldest, and I know that she's the one who's going to have to do everything. And so I thought I would make it easy for her. So we had a cookout. We sat around on the floor, and we just had a conversation. We laughed, we talked, and I kind of made it fun for them. I didn't want to make it a morbid situation. So we talked and we laughed, and I said, if you guys want to do this, it's fine. If you want to do that, that's fine. But I'm basically leaving it up to you. I'm going to be gone. However you want to do this is fine, but I want you all to talk about it. So we ate some barbecue, and we ate a few little desserts, and we drank some Kool-Aid, and we just sat around and just had a good time talking. We laughed, played around with the grandchildren while we were talking. They asked me a few questions. I answered those questions. What would be your decision? I told them I wanted to be cremated. That would be something. So they wouldn't have to march back and forth to the cemetery. That's the one thing that I did not want them to have to do. That is so sad to me, to have to march back and forth for anniversary of my death, for my birthday, for Mother's Day, for holidays, Independence Day, all of that. I didn't want them to have to do that. And my mother agreed to me having her cremated, so I didn't have to do that. So they decided that they was going to put my ashes in a necklace. And that's what they said they wanted to do. My youngest son said, I'm not so sure about that. I don't know if I really want to wear you around my neck. But that's what my daughter suggested, but I don't know what they're going to do. I'm just basically leaving it up to them. But at least this way they've got choices. This way they've got decisions that have already been made for them, and it should be relatively simple for them. And that's what I was trying to do.
Making it simple. And I'm a big fan of the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. Yes. Right? Like that's me. Like I think about, execution and doing different things. It's like, look, I want simple, purpose-driven execution. That's what I want. That's how I want it to operate. I mean, I don't want it to be complicated. I don't want anything to be complicated. I don't care what it is. Like, simplify it for me and keep it easy. And so to me, that conversation that you spawned and having the wisdom to have with, your kids was something that helps to simplify what at times becomes a complicated process. Right. And the other part, which is kind of cool about it, is once you had a conversation, then you're done. Then you can just say, but again, I'm even just being honest about it. That's still tough,
Yes, it is tough. And that's why I tried to make it so simple. I tried to let us have a decent conversation with a little laughter, a little fun, playing around with the grandchildren, talking, drinking a little Kool-Aid. We have what we call Our special baker Kool-Aid is what my family calls it. It is so sweet. You almost have to have an IV after you drink just one glass. But that's what we laughed about and just talking about that. But I tried to also instill in them the importance of saving. Don't wait till the very last minute to do things like that. Start saving. My mother taught me to take something out of each paycheck and put it aside. And that's what I have instilled in my children. My oldest son is like that. He saves. I mean, he does coins. He does origami and all that old stuff like that. But the important thing is that they know how to save. And I've taught them how to prepare for this particular time in their life and told them to do this for your children so that they will not have a tough time trying to think of what schools you went to, what church you went to, when you were baptized. They would have no way of knowing that information if you did not leave that with them. Some things that my mother had put in her obituary, and I was so grateful for that. My mother had picked out everything: her casket color, her flower color, her favorite scriptures, what songs she wanted, everything. It was so simple for me. And it made her leaving me not so very sad. So that's what I've done for them. My family sings. I've told them what songs I want them to sing at my funeral, my scriptures, who I want to read what scriptures I want them to read. And I think that way it makes it so simple for them. Although it's a sad situation, it does not have to be that sad, because you don't have to wreck your brain trying to think of everything that mom did. What did she do? They don't know what schools, what degrees I have. They don't know any of that information, because it happened before they were even born. So I just went ahead and wrote everything down for them. And I was so proud of the fact that I was able to do that and provide them with that information. And that's what I'm sharing with the brothers and the sisters. Go ahead and do that for your children. Teach them how to save. Teach them how to already pay for their funerals and have the situation taken care of. If you have to go to the funeral home and take care of that yourself, so they don't have to do that. It's already a sad situation. So why make a sad situation even worse by them having to think? Call family members. Family members have forgotten too. You're getting older. Your memory is starting to slip a little bit. And you don't know. All of my children are in their 40s. And I wanted them to be able to think of this situation not only as sad, but a joyous situation, because they have all the information that they need. They don't have to try to search and research and go through papers and everything. So they have all that information. And I'm so grateful to God that he gave me that wisdom to be able to write that down like my mother did for me.
You know, Sister G, you dropped something there, and it's making me think about, yes, we think about, end of life and transition and all, but to me, I also think about here and now, right? And living here and now. And you mentioned the concept of sharing information and having conversations about things that they may not know about. And it takes me back, I lost my last grandmother in October, almost a year ago to the day, last October. She was 92, and literally 92. She still had her mind. I mean, literally, it was an amazing situation for her to live 92 years and have her mental faculty completely all the way to the end. And I can remember over the last year of her life, I would call and we would have literally multi-hour long conversations. And we had talked before. We used to sit there and talk, and she would give me information about life or whatever. But over this last year, she became more in depth about family stories and about her father and about some memories she had growing up and some little specific instances that nobody ever knew about her, nobody would have record of. She was sharing those things with me over this last year. And hearing you talk now is such a special moment, because those are then things I can pass to my kids by telling them stories about their history that may not have been captured in a book or captured on video or captured in a picture, because it was an oral, basically passing down oral history. And so fellas and ladies listening too, I really want you all to be mindful of having open dialogue with your elders, but then have open dialogue with your kids. Start the habit of sharing information. And because of technology, we have video, we got pictures, we have, save stuff in the cloud. I mean, you have all kind of means of capturing information. Capture that stuff, save that data, save those stories, because I could only imagine, we have videos now and everybody got a camera on their phone or whatever. So my great grandkids are going to be able to not only wonder what their great grandfather sounded like, they're going to be able to pull up videos and see, like, my great grandfather looked like this. He walked like that. He talked like that. He told stories like this. Look at these images. Look at these pictures. I could only imagine what life would have been like if I was able to go back and see what my great grandfathers and grandmothers, how they talked, how they walked, the demeanor, how they carried themselves. It's like right now it's just kind of like hearsay, but right. I would have loved to be able to see that. So fellas and ladies, capture that information. And yes, it's good for end of life, but it's also good for now to empower you on your family lineage.
Now, that's what my family is doing right now. We have a website on Facebook, and we are talking, and we're trying to teach my second and third cousins. They're asking information about their great grandparents, and we are able to remember some of those things. In fact, just this week, we've talked about recipes, and the question was, what is a food that your grandmother or grandparents or a great grandparent did or cooked that still sticks in your mind? What was a saying that your grandmother or great grandmother did that still sticks in your mind? And I'm so glad that we started that. Not only that, but we also have a family tree that my cousin in Michigan keeps up. And I've just added to it because I've got a new granddaughter born last year. And so we're adding things all the time to where our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren can go back and see and follow down the family tree from my great-great-grandmother to the present time, where they won't have to wonder. And that's what we do every time we have a family reunion. We have those papers sitting on the table where everybody can go by, look at that, read, and know. We wonder, we think we're coming up with brand new names for our children. Some of these names were done generations ago. We're thinking we're coming up with new sayings. I remember dances and things like that we were doing that I thought was brand new. And my parents say, oh, that's nothing but the mashed potatoes, or that's nothing but the Watusi. We thought we were doing something new. and that was fun to me to hear my dad and my mom say that is nothing new. We've already done that, or we've already said that. And I remember now there's a commercial that comes on that says, you're cooking with gas. That's something my grandmother said all the time. When we were doing something good, she said, girl, you cooking with gas. And now that's coming back. But that's a saying that we had. We used to always talk about the rolls that my grandmother cooked. My aunt picked up. But there's a lot of recipes. And that's what I want to also encourage your people to know. Get these recipes that your grandmothers, your great grandmothers, your mother and have them to write those down so that you can go back and fix some of those things. Because we let our grandmother get away from us without doing the rolls, without doing what we called custard. It was something that we used to cook on the stove, and we ate that along with pound cake. Nobody knows how to fix the custard now because we let our great aunt get away with that recipe. Now, my mother had that recipe, but of course, I lost it. I don't know where it is. And now that's something that was a favorite for us that's gone forever. But now we do know how to do the rolls and the biscuits. We do know how to do the macaroni and cheese and the greens and the things like that. But there's some other things that we let get away from us. So I impress upon everybody is to sit down and talk to grandma while you have a chance. Write down some things. Have her to write down some things. Some sayings, some other knowledge. Don't let them get away from you without sharing some of those things, so that you can share them with your children.
That is, fellas, when you think about wisdom, I told you I'm speaking to a wise one here in Sister G. But that right there was such wise information. And again, we sometimes take it for granted because we have our phones with us. We're always snapping pictures of this, capturing video of this. And a lot of the stuff we snap pictures of and catch video of are really, things that really don't matter. Let's make sure that we're capturing the things that matter. Let's make
Amen.
sure we capture these things that are going to help to empower your kids and your grandkids and your great grandkids with the knowledge that, maybe my great grandparents didn't have a lot of money, but they had a lot of love and they brought a lot of value to the table. And you don't measure value in a person by their financial status, right? Their value was based off of the love they passed down, the wisdom they passed down, the things they overcame. I think Booker T. Washington stated, success is not determined by the position you hold, but the obstacles overcome to achieve that position.
That's right.
And so when I think about that, and we think about the African-American experience, all of our grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, and beyond were successful. And so to that point, our kids need to understand that, because in today's day and age, especially if you allow the world to define it, they might look 3 or 4 generations back and think that great-great-grandmother or great-great-grandfather was not successful. But until they hear the story and they see these things passed down, and like you mentioned, how things now, what is new was old, and what's old now becomes new again. And you start to realize that all you're doing is reinventing some stuff that was done 3 generations ago. You start to realize that, hold on, great-great-grandmama and great-great-granddaddy were on to something.
That's right. They were. My grandmother had a 6th grade education. And my grandfather only got to the 3rd grade. But my grandfather was a lineman for the telephone company. How he got that job, I will never know. But through him working for the phone company, that's how I got my job. Back in those days, in the 60s and 70s, if you had someone working for the telephone company, family member, and they considered family to be a sense of loyalty and of determination, and those were the kind of people that they wanted. That's how I got my job working for the phone company, was because my grandfather worked for the phone company. All I did was put down his name. I didn't even have to take a test. I was automatically hired because he worked for the phone company with a 3rd grade education, a lineman climbing poles and setting wires on poles with a 3rd grade education. I keep saying that because I want our young people to understand and know the importance of education. Nowadays, you have to have a college education to flip a hamburger. It used to be high school. It used to be you didn't even have to have a high school education to work for McDonald's. But nowadays, you have got to have an education. Young people know that you have got to go to school. It's more, I taught my children, it's more than 12 years of school. Now you have to think of 16 and 20, 24 years of education just to do things that you used to be able to do as a high schooler. And as a high school graduate, you can't have that anymore. That doesn't work anymore. You have got to have a college education. So please, young people, don't play around in school. Don't play around and act a nut. Stop killing each other. Understand that you have got to go to school to get a good education, to get a job, so you won't have to stay with mom and dad forever.
No,
you have to be on your own. Be able to get your own car, be able to get your own house, be able to take care of yourself. Let mom and dad, once they have retired, let them live their life not having to worry about you and taking care of you forever. Get a job, get out on your own, do your own thing.
I can't add nothing to that. That's wisdom. As the young folks say, you just dropped a bar. You just dropped a bar. And I think that's extremely important. The concept of education, understanding the power of education. And then with our conversation here is also understanding the power of education, even outside of the classroom, because there's so much to be learned. Because like you mentioned, your grandfather had a 3rd grade education as it pertains to school, but he was highly educated as it pertains to life. You know, I can think back to, you know, some of my great grandparents, same scenario. They might not have finished high school or whatnot, but and I'm talking about great grandparents, but they were super educated in regards to life. They knew how to navigate. They knew how to fix this, how to take care of that. I mean, they learned. So, you know, to me, life is a classroom as well. And so we need to go to the classroom to get the certifications and things to open up doors. But then we also need to pay attention to life, have conversations with our elders like I'm doing right here and soaking all of this in, because this is something that's going to help me to be a better man tomorrow. And fellas listening, ladies listening as well, take the opportunities to speak to your elders. It's going to be some things that you're going to get schooled on in regards to school and degrees and all of that. But then there are going to be so many things that you're going to learn that might not be school related, but they're going to educate you on life. Pay attention, allow that to come in, process it, but then figure out ways to use it in your life so that you can live to the best of your capabilities and to the best of your abilities so that you can make the world a better place.
One last thing I'd like to say, prayer.
Yes.
Prayer is so important. Learn how to pray with your children. Learn how to tell them about God. Learn how to administer to them the information that they need to get forward, to go forward in life. You can't go anywhere without prayer. You can't go anywhere without God. Tell them the importance of prayer. Prayer is the key to success. God is the key to success. And without him, you have nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I am so glad for my grandparents and my parents taking me to church and teaching me about God. I was baptized at an early age, but I knew about God at an early age because they told us about God. You know, all my first cousins, they all sang. We used to do concerts, and we called them back then recitals. They call them concerts now, but they were recitals back in the day. And just going and hearing them tell us who the major and minor prophets were. Do we even know that information? The books of poetry and the books of law. Do we even know that information anymore? I learned all that by listening to my first cousins, who were all younger than me, but their father was a minister. And sitting there and listening to them talk about this information, talking about prayer and singing about God, it is so important that you talk to your children and pray with them. Let them know the importance of religion. Let them know the importance of God and what he means in your life, how much you need him. You can't go in success, prayer, success, God.
Success.
That's all I got for you.
Prayer, success, God. I mean, what better way to end this dynamic conversation? You know, end with prayer. You know what I'm saying? Because that's exactly what we need. We need to have prayer. We need to understand have a relationship with God. We need to teach that to the next generation. You know, in the first book that I wrote, it was called Abe, Always Be Engaged, the 7 Keys to Living a Fit Urban Life. You know, one of the chapters is pray and tithe like a grandparent. And the whole concept of praying and tithing like a grandparent is when you start to realize the concept of faith and the concept of really understanding it, you don't see any better example than a praying and tithing grandparent, because that grandparent might not physically be strong. They might not have all the money. They might not have all the degrees and this and that. But when you see what they've overcome in life and you understand that they've overcome that based off of their faith, based off of their relationship with God, based off of their prayer, based off of their, you know, meditating on what God is, you know, inspiring them to do, it's another lesson to be learned that we can start to adopt at an earlier stage of life. And when you combine that with what you're physically gifted with because of God, and you marry those two things together, there's no limit.
There's no limit to what you can do when you've got God in your life. All things are possible if you only believe, but you have to start somewhere. And that somewhere definitely is with God.
Come on. Well, Sister G, I want to thank you for spending time with us today on Brothers Learning from Sisters. And fellas listening, ladies too, because y'all listen to this as well. I want y'all to really take heed to what she mentioned. She talked about having tough conversations, but tough but necessary conversations. Make things easier for, those that are coming behind you. And if you're one that has elders in your life, have the conversations with your elders. Get things out of the way. Get an understanding of what their thoughts are. Make sure you have I's dotted, T's crossed. But then as you move forward, share information, because a lot of times we fall victim to not capturing those moments, capturing those recipes, getting those nuggets of information that nobody else would hear about unless you had those conversations. Have those conversations with your elders. If you have the opportunity to do so, do that now, because those things will be valuable for generations to come. And last but not least, prayer. Make sure that you pray, make sure that you connect, you have a personal relationship with God yourself. But then on the flip side, make sure you show your children the importance of that and how God plays a major role in your life in the things that you do. And if you keep all of that stuff wrapped up and we take all this wisdom from Sister G, I think we're off to a good start. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and follow Coach Mike D everywhere on social media. Y'all be blessed, well, and wise.